यमुनतीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदनन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जना यमुनातीरावनचारी यमुनातीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम जय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय Mrishnapath Paramahansa Parivrajakachairya Ashtottara Shatarshi Srimad His Divine Grace His Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Mrishnapath Paramahansa Parivrajakachairya Ashtottara Shatarshi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्भागवतम की जय श्री श्री कृष्ण बलराम की जय श्री श्री गौर निताय की जय जगत गुरु शील प्रभुपाद की जय निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Devotees can come forward. If everybody occupies the whole area, where will Mataji sit? She has to sit on the floor. Mataji can also sit on the mat. Please come forward. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 21, text number 48 through 50. Text number 48. Atha Utajam Upayatam Athotajam Upayatam Athotajam Upayatam नृदेवं प्रणतं पुरः नृदेवं प्रणतं पुरः नृदेवं प्रणतं पुरः सपर्यया पर्यगृह्णात् सपर्यया पर्यगृह्णात् सपर्यया पर्यगृह्णात् प्रतिनन्द्य अनुरूपया प्रतिनन्द्यानुरूपया प्रतिनन्द्यानुरूपया अथोटजम् उपायातं नृदेवं प्रणतं पुरः सपर्यया पर्यगृह्णात् प्रतिनन्द्यानुरूपया अथोटजम् उपायातं नृदेवं प्रणतं पुरः सपर्यया पर्यगृह्णात् प्रतिनन्द्यानुरूपया अथोटजम् उपायातं नृदेवं प्रणतं पुरः सपर्यया पर्यगृह्णात् प्रतिनन्द्यानुरूपया अथ then Utajam, the hermitage, Upayatam, approached, Nridevam, the monarch, Pranatam, bowed down, Puraha, in front, Saparyaya, with honor, Paryagrihnath, received him, Pratinandya, greeting him, Anurupaya, befitting the king's position. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Seeing that the monarch had come to his hermitage and was bowing before him, the sage greeted him with benediction and received him with due honor. Kindly repeat. Seeing that the monarch had come to his hermitage and was bowing before him, the sage greeted him with benediction and received him with due honor. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Emperor Swayambhuva Manu not only approached the cottage of dried leaves possessed by the hermit Kardama, but also offered respectful obeisances unto him. Similarly, it was the duty of the hermit to offer blessings to kings who used to approach his hermitage in the jungle. Text number 49. Grihitarhanamasinam samyatam prinayan munihi smaran bhagavadadesham ityaha slakshnaya gira. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. After receiving the sage's attention, the king sat down and was silent. Recalling the instructions of the Lord, Kardama then spoke to the king as follows, delighting him with his sweet accents. Text number 50. Nunam chankramanam deva satam samrakshanayate vadhaya cha satam yastvam hareha shaktirhi palini. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The tour you have undertaken, O Lord, is surely intended to protect the virtuous and kill the demons, since you embody the protecting energy of Sri Hari. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It appears from many Vedic literatures, especially histories like Srimad Bhagavatam and the Puranas, that the pious kings of old used to tour their kingdoms in order to give protection to the pious citizens and to chastise or kill the impious. Sometimes they used to kill animals in the forest to practice the killing art, because without such practice they would not be able to kill the undesirable elements. Kshatriyas are allowed to commit violence in that way, because violence for a good purpose is a part of their duty. Here two terms are clearly mentioned: vadhaya, for the purpose of killing, and asatam, those who are undesirable. The protecting energy of the king is supposed to be the energy of the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text number 8, the Lord says, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam. The Lord descends to give protection to the pious and to kill the demons. The potency, therefore, to give protection to the pious and kill the demons or undesirables is directly an energy from the Supreme Lord. And the king or the chief executive of the state is supposed to possess such energy. In this age, it is very difficult to find such a head of state who is expert in killing the undesirables. Modern heads of state sit very nicely in their palaces and try without reason to kill innocent persons. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. So here we are seeing how Swayambhuva Manu has reached the hermitage of Kardama Muni. And having reached the hermitage of Kardama Muni, the behavior of both Kardama Muni and Swayambhuva Manu is exemplary. Swayambhuva Manu is the monarch. He is referred to here as Nrideva. Nrideva or Naradeva is the terminology used in Sanskrit to refer to a king or a monarch. Naradeva. Deva means actually the Lord. And Nara means human. Naradeva means the representative of the Supreme Lord, the human representative of the Supreme Lord. That is the meaning of the word Naradeva. The king or the monarch is supposed to represent the Supreme Lord Krishna and his interests. The king or the monarch is supposed to execute the mission of the Supreme Lord. The Lord has a certain purpose or a certain mission in creating this material world. The king or the monarch, the ruler of the people, of the humans, is supposed to be aware of this purpose of the Supreme Lord, and representing the Supreme Lord in fulfilling the Lord's desire, he is supposed to carry out his various functions and responsibilities. That is the original purpose with which the system of ruling the common masses of people was created, and the system of monarchy was created by the Supreme Lord. The way the human beings are to be governed is through a system of monarchy. That is the original design, original way the human beings are supposed to be governed and ruled. But of course, with time, in Kali Yuga especially, that system of monarchy has been deviated from, primarily because there are no qualified people. And when we speak of qualified people, what does the qualification mean? Today, our understanding and the teaching, the academics in the various colleges has advanced to such an extent that people are taught political science. So even politics has become a science, and it is taught in a very systematic way in the universities. So if somebody learns the political science, why will he not be qualified to lead the people? The qualification required to lead the people is not some mere academic qualification. The primary qualification required for a person to become a monarch or a king is that he must understand the Supreme Lord's intentions, desires and purposes in creating this material world and accordingly run it. So in the olden days, people like Swayambhuva Manu were fully aware of the purpose of the Supreme Lord behind this creation. And so therefore, they could very efficiently and properly implement the Lord's desire in ruling over the common mass of people. And so therefore, this Naradeva, this monarch, Swayambhuva Manu, who was ruling over the entire earthly planet, all the human beings are supposed to work under the direction of Manu. So this Swayambhuva Manu, when he came in front of a hermit, a sage, Kardama Muni, externally, when you look at both the people from the perspective of their opulence, the king or the monarch seems to be on a higher pedestal. The king has so much royal opulence, he has so many servants, so many, the army, the soldiers, the entire kingdom reports to him. All the citizens have to follow the king's orders. But that monarch, when he comes in front of a sage like Kardama Muni, what does he do? He bowed down and offered his obeisances. That means the king is not independently powerful. Now the king has to understand the purpose of the Supreme Lord and represent him in ruling over the people. Who are these people over whom the king has to rule over? They are the conditioned souls. So in this material world, there are conditioned souls and there are liberated souls. When the king comes across liberated souls, his ruling does not apply to those liberated souls. Those liberated souls are on a higher platform than the king himself. And that is why when Swayambhuva Manu approached the sage Kardama Muni, he immediately offered his obeisances, indicating that he is in a subordinate position. And Kardama Muni, although he is renounced, he is living in a hermitage, he is living in a thatched hut, and he is living in the forest. He is not in the midst of any palace and with a lot of servants and all that. He is living all alone. But still his position is superior to that of the monarch of the whole world. So the behavior of Swayambhuva Manu, being the monarch and submitting himself to Kardama Muni, submitting himself in a subordinate position, is exemplary of how the kings have to represent the Supreme Lord. So Kardama Muni, on his part, the moment the Emperor Swayambhuva Manu bowed down before him, he also offered his benedictions, his blessings. Because that is the way the rishi or a sage like Kardama Muni is duty bound to respond to a king who comes and submits himself to such a sage. So, the word Naradeva that way is very significant. The king is, because he is a representative of the Supreme Lord, he is not the absolute authority in himself. He derives his authority and power from being a representative of the Supreme Lord Krishna. So, as long as the king or the monarch has that in his consciousness while ruling over, that I am not the absolute authority or ruling personality. I am ruling on behalf of the Supreme Lord. I am just a representative of the Supreme Lord. The real ruler is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, when a king has that consciousness, then what happens is the Supreme Lord will empower him suitably. The king or the monarch will become the conduit for the flow of the Supreme Lord's energy to protect the citizens. Protecting the citizens, when we speak of protecting the citizens, it is of two kinds. One protection is physical protection, protection of one's body and one's surroundings from the any kind of physical harm which an inimical person can inflict upon one. The second protection that the king has to give to the citizens is spiritual protection. In other words, the king is duty bound to protect both the spiritual and material lives of the citizens. The citizens have to be, first of all, unless there is physical protection from the attack of enemies or any kind of animals and such other living entities, one cannot be able to peacefully sit and execute one's spiritual duties. So therefore, Kshattatrayate iti Kshatriyaha. Kshatriya has to protect the citizens from any kind of harm, physical harm which may come upon them. And so therefore a king not only has to fight against inimical kings or inimical soldiers, but he also has to protect the citizens from any wild animals that may attack them. Second kind of protection that the king is duty bound to give the citizens is spiritual protection in terms of the proper guidance for the common mass of people to practice their spiritual life. So, in today's world, the role of the chief executive or the role of the ruler, in effect, the king. In modern day, you may call him minister or president or prime minister or chief minister or whatever. So, the role of the chief executive is simply to ensure that everybody has suitable convenience for carrying out their sense gratificatory activities. That has become the definition of the chief executive. But reality is the chief executive is supposed to take care of the spiritual welfare of the citizens. Sense gratification, convenience for sense gratification is not so important. Because the king, being the representative of the Supreme Lord, understands that the Supreme Lord has created this material universe for educating the conditioned souls and liberating them from this material universe. So therefore the king is duty bound to perform that function of the Supreme Lord. But unfortunately, what is happening? Today the people don't have that understanding. The people think if the king or the chief executive is an atheist, also no problem. As long as he is taking good care of the convenience of the sense gratification of the citizens, no problem. That is how you see in our country we find many ministers are atheists. When the ministers take oath, once they are elected, they are supposed to take an oath. So when they take the oath, they are administered the oath by the governor or by the president of India, depending on whether it is the center or the state. The different MLAs or the MPs, when they come up and they take the oath, they will take the oath in the name of somebody or the other. Some people take in the name of the Supreme Lord, मैं ईश्वर के नाम में शपथ लेता हूँ, like that. Some people take oath in some other thing. Some people take oath on some scripture, like say Bhagavad Gita or something like that. Some people, they are atheists, so they won't take oath in all these things. They will say, I take oath in the name of truth, blah, 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 blah. And they'll, after taking the oath, they will do all the most corrupt things in the country. So, the consideration, and people also don't mind. People think, what is there? He's an atheist, that is his private thing. As far as we are concerned, he is making all arrangements for bijli, for electricity, water, roads, all these things, nice things he is doing. So what is wrong? So this has become the order of the day. But then, if you look at the original design of this universe, the Supreme Lord wants only the devotees of the Supreme Lord, not atheists, to become the rulers. In fact, the system of governance in this world is such that because we have all rebelled against the Supreme Lord's desires and we have come to this material world, there is a system put in place in this universe to punish the errant souls. Punishment is a part of this universe which is required to maintain proper order. If there is no system of punishment, then there will be no deterrence for the criminals. And then there will be only anarchy in this world. To maintain law and order, to maintain harmony and peace in the society, the system of giving punishments to criminals is essential. Now, we all understand that if somebody harms another person or prevents him from enjoying what is rightfully his, then he is subjected to punishment. I go and encroach somebody else's land, I will get punished by the government. I try to kill someone, I go and stab someone with a knife, I will get punishment. So that is one set of punishments that we are all aware of and we are conversant with in the modern day world. But if we look at it in the Vedic perspective, in the Vedic times, punishment was not only accorded to physical harm or encroaching upon others' rights, but also for misguiding or preventing the spiritual advancement of the people. In the olden times, if a person in the Vedic civilization, if somebody is an atheist or he misguides the people spiritually, then he is also liable for punishment by the government. If that person who happens to be misguiding the people or he is an atheist becomes too powerful, then the Supreme Lord himself will descend to punish him. The Lord considers this so important. For example, the Lord descended as Ramachandra to punish Ravana. Why? Primarily because he was an atheist. Similarly, Hiranyakashipu was also punished by the Supreme Lord Narasimhadev. Why? Because he was an atheist. So, we have to understand that if somebody does not obey, subject himself to the command of the Supreme Lord, then he is liable to be punished. So, every incarnation of the Supreme Lord descends for two purposes. As Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport, Prabhupada quotes the 8th verse of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the famous verse, Paritranaya sadhuna vinashaya cha dushkritam sambhavami yuge yuge. The Supreme Lord descends in every yuga. He incarnates to paritranaya sadhunam, to protect the devotees, vinashaya cha dushkritam, and to annihilate the dushkritas. Who are the dushkritas? Dushkritas are those who put obstacles in the path of the devotional service of the devotees. So if we look at the Dushkritas, the people who are Dushkritis, those who create trouble for the devotees, they may be very good in administration. Like for example, when the Pandavas were in 14 years exile, at that time Duryodhana was ruling over the kingdom. He was the emperor for the whole world. It is not that when he was ruling over the entire world, people were all subjected to all sorts of problems. There was maladministration, there was too much corruption. None of those things were there. He was doing his duties very well. In fact, when the time came, when the right time came, every year there is a set time when the kings, because their duty is to protect the cows and the brahmanas, they have to ensure that all the cows are properly protected. So when the time came for that suitable activity to be taken up, Duryodhana himself went. Being the emperor of the world, he went himself to count all the cows and to ensure that all of them are in proper condition. And that is how, of course, he had a fight with Arjuna, who came as Brihannala, and with Uttara, and in the kingdom of Virata Maharaj. So the Duryodhana himself went to count the cows and to ensure that they are all protected and well kept. So you can see, he was that way, he was doing his duties very nicely. And look at Karna. Karna was another personality. He is famous for his dana, for his charity. He would never say no to some Brahmana who would come and ask him anything in charity. Similarly, Jarasandha was also very famous. He would never say no whenever any poor Brahmana would come and ask him anything in charity. He was so famous. So, we can see from all these things that although a person may make all suitable arrangements to take care of the material welfare of the citizens, still that person becomes liable for punishment because he is not a devotee of the Supreme Lord. So, the kings who used to follow this principle that I am a servant of the Supreme Lord, I am a representative of Krishna, and so therefore I will not allow anybody in my kingdom to be an atheist or to deviate people from the devotional service of Krishna. If any such person is there, I'll take immediate steps to punish that person. When a king has this consciousness and he rules over the citizens with this policy, then what happens is the Supreme Lord's power will flow through him to protect the citizens. So protecting the citizens is not based upon one's own strength. It requires the Supreme Lord's power to flow through him to be able to protect the citizens. If one does not represent the Supreme Lord, that power of the Supreme Lord will not flow through him and he will not be able to protect the citizens. And that is why we are seeing today, in today's world, there are so many kings, so much advanced military knowledge is there, so many advanced weapons are there, aircraft are there, the navy is there, submarines are there, they can go deep into the water, they can fly in the sky, everything they can do. But still you see, so much crime is rampant in the society. So what are the kings doing? What are the chief executives doing? The prime minister, the president, they are all having all modern technology. Every single facility is there at their disposal, but they are not able to protect the citizens. Terrorists are increasing. The criminals are increasing. So, one terrorist, Dawood Ibrahim, he devastated Bombay in 1993, in the Bombay blasts. And look at him, comfortably sitting in Pakistan. The whole world knows. Nobody is able to do anything to him. Why? Because the kings have lost, the rulers have lost the power to protect the citizens. They are unable to take steps to punish the miscreants. Some power is there, that's why some little bit of something they are able to do. But by and large, if you see, terrorists, then dons are increasing, underworld connections are all running everywhere. So people, the crime is flourishing in today's world, despite the immense power wielded by the rulers, which is because they are not representing the Supreme Lord. The policy today of the rulers is, somebody is an atheist, he can also be a normal citizen. He can even become a ruler also, no problem. Dharma or spirituality should be separated from the administration. The rulers should be completely secular. They should not bring their faith in the Supreme Lord onto the table while ruling over. This is the thinking of the modern day world. And so therefore what happens? They lose their power to protect the citizens. It's such a simple thing. If you see in the United States, actually, India is supposed to be a developing country, and so the developed nations like the US are considered to be far more advanced. In the United States, unless one is a practicing Christian, he has faith in God, he cannot become the president. So therefore, before every election, the president has to, they come in various television interviews, and there they have to profess their faith. And not only that, when a new president wins the election in the United States, the first thing he does is, after winning the election, go to the church. And that will be circulated in the media everywhere, that he has gone to the church and now he is going to take charge of the country. So this is the most developed nation. And India is still developing. And here in India, if the minister goes to a temple or something like that, immediately there will be so many voices. No, ruler has to be secular. He cannot be religious. And there are so many ministers in our country who are totally atheists also. So, why? Because the thinking is the administration should be completely different from one's religious inclinations. So, why? Because the ruling is not meant for spiritual welfare of the citizens. Citizens' spiritual welfare, let them go to hell, no problem. We have to take care of their material sense gratification, and they have to pay us taxes. That's the end of the job of the government. So, this kind of ruling, this kind of policy by the government to remain secular is actually the policy of the Asuras. And when Asuras rule, they will not be able to protect the citizens properly, because they don't have the authority flowing from the Supreme Lord. The power for protection comes from the Supreme Lord. It's not an individual power to possess. It is the Shakti of the Supreme Lord. And so therefore, we have to understand that the mission of the Lord is not only to protect the devotees, those believers, but also to punish those who are atheists, those who don't believe in the Lord. Every incarnation of the Lord performs these two functions. So we see when Krishna was present on this planet, so many asuras he killed. He killed Kamsa, Aghasura, so many asuras, Jarasandha, so many people. Either Krishna killed personally, or he had one of his people, one of his devotees to kill them. Despite all, they may be having many, many good qualities, but still, Krishna did not want them to be rulers because they were atheists. They did not surrender to him. Duryodhana was another such example. So many things. Even Ramachandra also, when he came, he killed Ravana. Now Ravana was ruling over Lanka very nicely. At that time, Lanka was called Swarna Lanka. All the houses, external cladding and all was full gold. So you can imagine the opulence. That means all his citizens were living in real opulence. He was taking good care of the economy of the country that he was ruling over. But the Lord was not satisfied. He is not a devotee. He should not be there, because if he is a non-devotee, he will not allow the spiritual growth of the citizens. In fact, the entire Vedas which are supposed to be the manual for the humankind to live by, are meant to push the living entities towards spirituality, towards going back to Godhead. All these rulers, if they keep the Vedas aside and make their own rules and make their own laws and govern the citizens, then what happens? You are preventing the Vedas from benefiting the citizens and helping them go back to Godhead. Actually, this is reality. The modern day, the rulers, their whole intention is how to stop the people from progressing spiritually, how to motivate them and push them towards material sense gratification more and more. In the 70s and 80s, there was one president of the United States, Ronald Reagan. I don't know whether all of you have heard of him. Before becoming the president of the United States, he was a very successful Hollywood actor. So he was very famous. He was a very God-fearing man. At heart, he was a great believer. When he became the president of the United States, he brought in a law. What was the law? A very simple law. What was the law? He said, in all the schools in the United States, at the beginning of the school or beginning of the class, all the students should recite one prayer to Jesus. Prayer to God or Jesus or something like that. One small prayer he introduced. So much opposition. So much opposition from all quarters. No. How you can do this? How you can force the children to pray to God and this and that and all that. Finally, he had to repeal that rule. And then when repealing that rule, he expressed this anguish to the media. He said, what kind of country are we living in that we are depriving our children of the opportunity to pray to God? But then he could not do anything. Because all the rulers who are elected by the people are like that. They are all atheists. So therefore, even if in today's world, even if a God-fearing person comes to power and he wants to do something for the citizens to direct them towards God, direct them towards spirituality, it is so tough, next to impossible. So this is the nature of the world has become like this. This is because in Kali Yuga, everyone has partaken of the Asuric mentality. But then the Lord has his ways of executing his mission. The Lord, whenever he comes, the Lord and his agents, whether it is the king or the acharyas or the Supreme Lord and his incarnations, all of them, they are oriented towards these two things. One is protecting the devotees, annihilating the atheists. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was the most munificent incarnation of the Supreme Lord, he was the Namo Mahavadanyaya. He is the most munificent, most Patita Pavana. So, Patita Pavana Hetu Tomara Avatara. The Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advented to liberate the most fallen of the conditioned souls. Krishna, when he came, he said, Paritranaya Sadhunam. I came for the sadhus, for the devotees. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came for the fallen conditioned souls. So even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu followed this principle of punishing those who were against the devotional principles. Although Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Patita Pavana, there is nobody who can be more merciful than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, like we sing every day in the morning, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the most, there can be nobody who is more merciful than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, but then, even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took steps to punish people who are inimical to devotional principles. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to, even though he is Patita Pavana, he is Patita Pavana for those souls who are not inimical towards the devotional principles. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Navadvip, he was a Grihastha. Every day in the evening, he would go to Srivas Thakur's house, Srivas Angan, and there they used to perform Sankirtan. Together with all the, Advaita Acharya and others would come, and they will all together, they would engage in Sankirtan. But at that time, Navadvip, there were different classes of people there. There were Brahmana, primarily Navadvip was full of Brahmanas. We all know how Jagannath Mishra was a great scholar, and Navadvip was a center of scholarship and all that. So, there were two kinds of Brahmanas in Navadvip. One was the Shaktas, who were worshippers of Lord Shiva and Durga, and there were Vaishnavas. These were the two divisions, primary divisions. So those who were Shaktas, those who were worshippers of Lord Shiva and Durga, were considered lower in the society. Those who were Vaishnavas were considered superior Brahmanas. Now amongst the Vaishnava Brahmanas also, there were caste Brahmanas. Those were devotees, those were Vaishnavas by caste. And then there were those who were real Vaishnavas, people like Srivas Thakur, Advaita Acharya, etc. So, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would go in the evening to perform Sankirtan in Srivas Thakur's house, he wanted to avoid these so-called Vaishnavas, who are not real Vaishnavas, but they were by caste used to call themselves Vaishnavas, but at heart they were not really Vaishnavas. He wanted to avoid them from attending the Sankirtan, because if they would come, they would make fun, they would criticize, and then they would become offenders. So to prevent them from committing offenses, what the Lord would do, evening when he would go to Srivas Thakur's house, he would close the doors and lock it, and then they would have Kirtan inside the house. Now these so-called Vaishnava Brahmanas, but who were at heart, they were not real Vaishnavas, they had a great desire to go to Srivas Thakur's house when the Sankirtan was going on there and criticize or do some kirkiri they wanted to do. But when they found that the door is locked, what happened? The fire in their stomach became, it started burning them up. What is this? We are not able to go and create some trouble. Now what to do? Amongst all of them, the chief troublemaker amongst them was a Brahmana called Gopala Chapala. So this Gopala Chapala said, I will do something, because this Srivas Thakur is the person who is the source of all the trouble. He is the person in whose house has become the headquarters of all these Vaishnavas. So we'll teach them a lesson. We'll teach a lesson to Srivas Thakur, by which all these people will get taught a lesson. So what he did, he wanted to defame Srivas Thakur. He wanted to spoil his reputation. He wanted to character assassination he wanted to do. So what he did, in the night, this Gopala Chapala, he brought a plantain leaf and kept it at the courtyard, outside the courtyard of Srivas Thakur's house. And then on that plantain leaf, he kept all the various articles, one red flower, some kunkuma, some turmeric powder, and then red sandalwood paste, all these things which are meant for worshipping Bhavani, worshipping Durga Devi. And then one pot of liquor also, because that is generally offered to Durga Devi by the Shaktas. So he kept all these things and then silently went away in the night. His intention was, next day morning, call all the local Vaishnavas, create a hangama and see how he is a covered Shakta. Externally he shows himself to be a Vaishnava, but he is really a Shakta. He is a worshipper of Durga Devi. Then what would happen? People would all reject him and his reputation will be spoiled. So people will think he is a charlatan, he is an impostor, and so people will not respect him anymore. That was Gopala Chapala's, the idea, his plan. Next day morning, Srivas Thakur got up, early morning he got up and opened his house door. Moment he opened his door and stepped out, he saw in his courtyard all these things are kept for worshipping Durga Devi. So what Srivas Thakur did, he smiled, and instead of getting alarmed or something, he called all the people. He himself called all the people in his neighborhood and come, he told them. So everybody came. What, early morning, why are you calling? He said, I wanted to show all of you one thing. Actually, in reality, I am not a Vaishnava. I am internally a Shakta. You see in my house, in front of my house, all these arrangements I have made for worshipping Bhavani. That means in the night, when nobody is there, I keep worshipping Durga Devi. In the morning, I make a show as if I am a Vaishnava, so that I can get all your respect and adoration. Like this, he himself declared. Now, all the people, they knew what is Srivas Thakur. Moment he said like this, hey, who has done this? Who is that sinful man who has done this? Catch him and we'll beat him up. How can somebody do this to Srivas Thakur? Then immediately they call the sweeper and tell him, clean up everything. And they themselves cleaned everything, and then everybody begged forgiveness from Srivas Thakur and went. So Gopal Chapala's plot failed. He wanted to spoil the reputation of Srivas Thakur. Exactly the opposite happened. So now anyway what to do? Everybody is looking for who is that guy who did this in the night. So Gopal Chapala was silent. Now I cannot do anything because everybody is, waiting to catch the guy who did all this, who is the culprit. So after 3 days, Gopala Chapala got leprosy. And because leprosy is a contagious disease, you cannot even the plate from which they eat, that cannot be shared by anybody else, even if it is washed. It is so contagious. So, Gopala Chapala could not stay in the house. He could not even stay in the village. He had to shift out of the village and stay in a, he started living under some tree on the bank of the Gangaji. And his body became so afflicted with leprosy, worms started coming out of his body, his whole body was burning, and he was suffering too much. So some days passed like this. Every day his suffering kept on increasing. His whole body was burning. Now what to do? He cannot do anything. There was no cure for leprosy at that time. I don't know whether today there is any cure for leprosy, but at least at that time it was not there. So he was suffering like this. One day, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he took his bath in Gangaji and he was passing that way. And so this Gopala Chapala saw him, and then he immediately fell at his lotus feet and started praying to him. Oh Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you are the Patita Pavana. You are an avatara of compassion. You have taken this incarnation to liberate the most fallen souls. And I am such a fallen soul. I am such a sinful man. You look at me, how I have become. And I am suffering so deeply. So please liberate me from this misery. Like this, I am taking shelter of your lotus feet. Like this, he prayed to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Patita Pavana. He is most munificent and most merciful. So when Gopala Chapala fell at his feet and prayed to him, what was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's response? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, you are the most sinful man, and you have offended pure devotees, and you are envious of pure devotees. Therefore, I will not deliver you. I am not going to deliver you. Even if you take 1 crore births, I will not deliver you. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said this and walked off. So you see, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the deliverer of the most fallen, even Jagai and Madai delivered. Gopala Chapala refused. Why? Because he was an offender at the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas. In the case of Jagai and Madai, they understood their mistake and they begged forgiveness for the mistake of offending Nityananda Prabhu. But they were not envious of Nityananda Prabhu. What had happened was, Jagai and Madai, they were drunken. In the drunken stupor, they thought Nityananda Prabhu is some ordinary person and they attacked him. That's all. But the moment they realized that he was a Vaishnava, they fell at his feet and begged forgiveness and all that. In the case of Gopala Chapala, in his heart he was envious of Srivas Thakur and the other Vaishnavas, the true Vaishnavas. And so therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted Gopala Chapala to further undergo punishment till he realized his mistake. So Gopala Chapala started reflecting on the mistake he had done, and he realized that what kind of mistake he had done. But then what could he do? He was afflicted with leprosy, and then he continued suffering, and he did not die. Although the suffering was very intense, he did not die. He kept suffering. And we all know, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, later what happened? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu later took sannyas. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Jagannath Puri. And then after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, he came back to Navadvip. After he took sannyas and he had settled in Jagannath Puri. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came from Jagannath Puri to Navadvip, at that time Mahaprabhu again met this Gopala Chapala. And at that time, again Gopala Chapala fell at the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and begged forgiveness from him. The first time when he begged forgiveness from Mahaprabhu, his begging of forgiveness from Mahaprabhu was to liberate him from material misery. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not interested in relieving the material misery of people. He wants to liberate the living entities. So therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not alleviate his material misery in the first instance. Second instance, he was really repentant, Gopala Chapala. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I want you to understand what is the mistake you have done. You have offended a pure devotee, Srivas Thakur. So therefore, if you want to become free from your sinful reaction, then you have to go and beg forgiveness from Srivas Thakur. Then immediately, Gopala Chapala, by then he had understood so much suffering he had undergone. his intelligence started working. So he went and fell at the lotus feet of Srivas Thakur. And Srivas Thakur is a pure devotee. He immediately forgave him. After that, Gopala Chapala got cured of his leprosy. So you can see how the Supreme Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is mercy. He is the most merciful incarnation. Even he gave punishment like this to Gopala Chapala. Why? Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam. Whenever the Lord incarnates, he carries out these two functions. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not pick up any weapon, but still he punished personalities like Gopala Chapala who offended pure devotees. So we have to understand from this, every incarnation of the Lord, even as an incarnation who does not pick up weapons, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even there he performed this activity of protecting the devotees and punishing the atheists, those who are against the Vaishnavas. So it is from all these instances which are there in the scriptures, we have to understand that it is not a matter of individual or personal choice. If I like, I can be a devotee. If I don't like, I'm an atheist also, no problem. There is no harm. You can also live your life, I can live my life. No. If I become an atheist, then I am liable for punishment. If the king does not take up that responsibility, then the Supreme Lord will take the responsibility upon himself and he will use material nature to give us that punishment. So if the king does not give punishment, what will happen? There will be disease, there will be pandemic, there will be tsunami, there will be flood, there will be earthquake, all these punishments will befall the citizens. When devotee kings ruled this world, then at that time citizens were very happy. There were no pandemics, there were no earthquakes. When Yudhishthira Maharaj and Dhruva Maharaj and these kind of personalities, pure devotees ruled the world, there would not even be excessive heat and cold. People would not die in young age. They would only become old and die out of natural causes. So all these things were there the citizens used to enjoy even material comforts when the kings were doing their proper duty as representatives of the Supreme Lord. Now when the rulers have started thinking, I am ruling, I have got some material intelligence and material power because of which I am ruling over this world, what has happened? They have actually lost the power to protect the citizens. They cannot take care of the welfare of the citizens. They may give equal status in the society to devotees as well as to atheists, but then the Lord will carry out his mission of punishing those who are atheists. This is the reality. So if we want a society which is free from all these problems of pandemics and earthquakes and all these kind of natural disasters which are affecting this world today, then the only way is that the rulers have to become devotees of the Supreme Lord Krishna and they have to punish the atheists. Then the Lord will, then all these natural disasters and calamities will also subside. So we have to understand these things, and there have been many such examples of great kings who have been devotees even in recent history. Just like the Kerala was being ruled over by King Marthandavarma. He was a very powerful king. He was so powerful that all the surrounding kings he attacked and he subjugated them. He fought with them and subjugated them. And after expanding the kingdom sufficiently and bringing all the kings under his subjugation, he went back to Trivandrum. And he went to Ananta Padmanabha Swami temple, Kshetra. He kept the sword before the sword and the crown of the king before the Ananta Padmanabha Swami and the deity of Ananta Padmanabha Swami. And he told, from today onwards, you are the ruler of this kingdom. I will act as your representative. I will rule on your behalf. So he was a great devotee of Ananta Padmanabha Swami. Therefore, he was a powerful ruler. Even Krishna Devaraya, he was also a powerful ruler. So where did he get his power from? Because he was a great devotee of Tirupati Balaji. So, when a king, when a ruler becomes a devotee of Krishna and he ensures that the citizens all become devotees and those who are atheists, they get punished, then what happens? He'll become naturally very powerful because the Supreme Lord's power is unlimited. To the extent the ruler is the devotee, to that extent the unlimited power of the Supreme Lord will flow through him. So, if really the citizens have to become peaceful and happy, and there has to be prosperity and peace and harmony in the society, what is required? A Vaishnava ruler is required. This is the reality. So, these are some of the points from today's verses. We'll stop here. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.